Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Salam sejahtera bagi kita semua. Om Swastiastu, Namo Buddhaya, Salam Kebajikan. Welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us for today's webinar. Welcome back to Guest Indonesia Digital Series, a series of activities from Guest Indonesia 2020 event. My name is Farah Karima, your MC, and present with me today as a speaker, Mr. Richard Sidharta. Mr. Richard Sidharta is a director of Beacon Academy Jakarta and the chairperson of ANPS, or Association of National and Private Schools, Indonesia leading association focused on affordable and accessible professional development. Richard is an educator at heart and is an advocate for social and emotional learning and developing positive relationship in the classroom. Richard is a facilitator for the Virtues Project, speaking at workshops and conferences around the country with topics surrounding the heart of education. And Richard also hosts the Family of Virtues podcast, which focuses on the moral and spiritual development of children through the language of virtues. And today, Mr. Richard Sidharta will be presenting the heart of education, what we need to encourage our teachers to do, create a culture of positivity in the classroom. And now, without further ado, I will turn the time over to Mr. Richard Sidharta.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Farah, for the wonderful opportunity. And thank you, GESS, as well, for the wonderful opportunity that's been presented to me. And hope everybody's having a good day during such uncertain times. I hope everybody's safe and families are okay. I honor you for your commitment to be here and to continue to learn, to continue to improve ourselves, especially in education. As the introduction suggested, I am very passionate about social and emotional wellness and the heart of education, which is what my workshop, my session is going to focus on today. Just before we start, you can follow me on LinkedIn, Instagram, or Twitter under R. Sidharta. And also, if you want to know more about the virtues, and I'll speak more about that later as well, follow me on Instagram on Family of Virtues. I'm going to announce some giveaways later for that as well, if you're interested. So moving on. All of us want our students and our children to be successful. Nowadays we build schools in such a way that we want to celebrate all different kinds of talents, all different kinds of, academics, different kinds of learners who are good in everything. Parents too want their children to be successful. But let's look at how things have changed. The difference between what used to happen before and what happens now. Right now, everybody feels that they need to climb up the corporate ladder. Parents feel really happy and impressed if their children are in top tier jobs, working long hours, at least they're in some multinational company. Schools put up big banners of all the top universities that their students go to. Look at society. Our homes are now smart homes. We can start our cars. We can automate our light bulbs. We can make sure that everything switches on and switches off at a certain time. Everything has become smarter, hasn't it? We have refrigerators that even talk to us, and some refrigerators that even know when you're out of stock of certain things. It hasn't come to Indonesia yet, as far as I know, but I'm pretty sure, the time will come when that happens as well. And then you've got these smart toilets. This has been converted to a PDF, so you can't see, but actually what happens next is that it changes color, So toilets that basically oscillate and give you that feeling like this is where you need to sit for an hour. You've got AirPods, you've got watches that tell you when you've got heart problems, you've got phones that can shoot films, like as if you were a Hollywood director. Everything is better, isn't it? If we look at the world the way it goes, everything is better. Look at how long people are living. Back in 1960, the world life expectancy at birth was around 52, 53 years old. Right now, the world life expectancy at birth is at 72. So over 20 years, it has grown. But yet, we live longer lives and are more reliant on medication to keep us alive. Anxiety, stress, depression, these are such common things that are affecting not adults, guys, not adults, but these are things that are now affecting teenagers. So we may live longer lives, but the main question is, what sort of lives are we living when children so young are being diagnosed as having anxiety or having depression? So then and now, a very common occurrence, I don't know whether you've seen this, but whenever we go and eat at restaurants, this is what we see. We see families coming together, and what do they have? They have devices, and they're all chatting on their devices, right? And they don't speak to one another. This whole fragmented, isolated approach is damaging society. And then we complain about anxiety and depression because we don't talk to one another. We are not communicating with one another. Right from the family level, we are not communicating with one another. And that therein lies an issue. And it's a very, very big one at that. Everything's really important. And I get that. Whenever we're on our phones, we might argue, I need to answer this email now. I need to respond to the teacher now. I need to submit my assignment now. There's always that thing involved. However, there are certain things in our day that we just don't multitask. I mean, if we take a shower, we're not bringing the phone to the shower. We know that that's a dedicated time that we give to our bodies to keep ourselves clean. And if you look back in the olden days, people were much happier. They didn't have all this advancement in technology, but the level of contentment, the level of satisfaction, the level of humanity, the level of loving thy neighbor, making sure that we're all together, combined in one common humanity, was much more apparent back then. So I always have that question, then and now. How have we shown that as human beings, we've actually progressed? Right now, these are the icons that are on the forefront. WhatsApp messages, Instagram, Twitters, and Facebook messengers, and these double tick syndrome. The double tick syndrome, you send a message to somebody, you get one tick. And then after that, you're like, oh my God, why aren't there two ticks? How many times do I have to let this person know? Or, doesn't this person charge their phone? I can't believe their phone is switched off. And then there's a double tick. You're like, okay, great, it's been delivered. And then it turns blue. Okay, great, they've read it. Why aren't they replying? I can't believe it. How long do I have to wait until I get a reply? Should I text back? Should I not? Should I text back? Should I not? Am I going to look too desperate? Am I not? So just look at what's going on in our mind. Two ticks are controlling our entire emotion. Everything is so instant in our lives. And when all of us were growing up, the only thing we had to worry about was instant noodles. But right now, it is those numbers on our screens that are dictating how we live our lives. And the tiny red dots on our phones take over our lives, right? So it is really an issue. I miss these days when phone numbers were only 5 numbers. Right now, mobile numbers are 12 digits. I used to ride my BMX bike around the complex every evening. My parents didn't have to call me or put a tracker on me to find out whether I was coming at a certain time. I knew I had to do my homework. I knew I went out there on a bike. I came back home and everything was okay. And then we look at education. Of course, we are all here for education. We're all part of schools. And now we've got all these fantastic new equipment, new furniture, soft seating, mushroom cushions, diagonal, hexagonal, blah, blah, gonal, so many different kinds of shapes that furniture manufacturers ask us to buy. Digital projectors, touch screen, single screen interface, multi-screen interface, and all what have you. I mean, there's so much going on, with STEM, science, technology, engineering, and mathematics as well, all combining together, saying that this is really the future. And then they say, no, you can't just do that. It's not just STEM, it's STEAM, right? The A needs to come in. It's all about the arts as well. And that's great. But what's next? Is all of this a fad? Are we just waiting for the next fad that we are supposed to hang on to? I had a teacher once, and he came to me and he showed me my results in that subject. And he did it right in front of the whole class. He took my paper, he slammed it on my table, and he said, Richard, what's happened to you? What's happened? He showed me my paper. He said, look at what you were like last year with another teacher. And look at what you're doing now with this teacher. And, he basically was saying that I had so much potential, I had the capacity, but I wasn't performing. But the way he chose to do that was by slamming my paper in front of me on my table, in front of the class, and just for everybody else to watch, and me getting shamed, basically. So how a teacher would expect that I would feel encouraged and motivated by that is beyond me. And I'm not in any way suggesting that you do this, but it brings me to my point about how our relationships are really, really important. And children don't learn from people they do not like. It's very, very simple. If you haven't seen the TED Talk by Rita Pearson, you should. Just listen to it. It's only 7 to 8 minutes long, and it is very inspirational. And that's what I'm getting at today, the heart of education. How do we meet that target? How do we get right to the crux of everything that's going on? Let's look at language. When you Google the word study and do an image search, this is what comes up. There is a negative connotation associated with the word study. But if you look up the word learn, this is what comes up. Knowledge, skills, understanding, an interweaving of all our brain waves, an interweaving of all our neurons, everything coming together to consolidate what we know and how we know it. That's really, really important. And what we've got here is a prefrontal cortex, right? Which is responsible for problem solving, creativity, reasoning and reflection, self-awareness, kindness, and empathy. And the moment somebody is scared or in fear of something, like what that teacher did to me, what happens is all of that disappears. The ability to do all of these things will disappear. When your prefrontal cortex is in a place of stress, you will not be able to solve problems. I mean, imagine if you had a friend who was very intimidating, or if there is a mother or a father that's really intimidating, or a daughter-in-law and a mother-in-law. We seem to like those Sinatron kind of examples. But just imagine if you were actually sitting there and cooking, or if a son was trying to fix something and there's somebody on top of them, basically stressing them out. And if you're going to put them in a place of stress where they don't feel that they're good at something, then their ability to solve problems, their ability to think out of the box, to be creative, all of that goes completely out the window. So if we want our children to do any of these things, we need to make sure that we speak to them in a respectable way and show them that they have the capacity to be able to achieve. And when the brain does not feel safe, what happens? Children will defy. Children will blame. Children will defend themselves. They will over-explain. They will be hyperactive. They will act aggressive. They will bite. They will kick. They will hit. But if you remember, or from so many conferences, you would have seen this overused analogy of the iceberg, okay? What we see is only the top of the iceberg. Children ask for love in the most unloving ways. So just because they're doing any of these things, it does not mean that they intend to. Okay, the impact may be this, but there is a need that isn't being satisfied. And what do we do as teachers to make the brain feel unsafe? One, we threaten, like the example that I gave of my teacher. So the threatening, the disappointing tone of voice, how can you do this? And then, don't get me wrong, this is not just screaming, this is even sarcasm, like, oh yeah, I know you're not going to be able to do it. Oh, that's okay, Richard. Maybe if you come on time tomorrow, then we can consider it. But I know that's going to be hard for you. And you know that I come notoriously late. And you think that just by making a sarcastic comment like that, I'm going to actually want to come to you on time, right? Instead of actually saying, I really had fun and I enjoyed our conversation today. You're so creative. If you'd like, you could come in like 10 minutes earlier tomorrow morning and we can discuss how you can really build that rocket and what equipment you would need to be able to do it. And suddenly the child switches on and says, yeah, of course I'd like that. And you've actually given them a reason to show up. You've given them a reason to establish and to develop that relationship with you. But if we think that because we have the power, because we have the privilege, we have to threaten them, punish them, go stand outside the room, be so disappointed, all of those things, making the children feel bad is not going to get the desired outcome. And I always say, please remember that these children, these students are human beings, and treat them the way you would like to be treated. Imagine if your boss or your principal or your coordinator or your family member, your husband, your wife, your friends spoke to you in a particular way, spoke to you and they were disappointed with you. Imagine if you were about to go to a restaurant and you sat down and they're like, oh, Richard, so typical, always late. Instead of actually saying, wow, so nice to see you. You know, every time we go, they always say the same thing. They're nagging and always comparing. So if we don't like it, and then we start going home and saying, I'm never going to hang out with them again. If we don't like it, why do we think that our children do? The only reason they show up is because their parents are paying the fees and they're actually pushing them out of the house to be able to get to the classroom. But if they really had a choice, they would not want to be in the same class as a teacher that does any of these things. So we have a mental health crisis. 1 in 10 children have a mental health disorder. Half of all mental ill health manifests before the age of 14. Before the age of 14. Half of all mental health before the age of 14. And why? A lot of children, when they were asked why they actually do certain things or commit certain, when they have bad behavior, or even young children or teenagers that commit crimes and have to go to prison, a lot of them were asked, why do you do it? And a very common answer is, I was bored. I was just bored. They had no purpose in life, no meaning. They didn't know what else to do. And finding our purpose is what allows us to wake up every morning and get that joy, that jump in our step, if you like, right? And if we go back to childhood, the best predictor of enjoyable adult life is a child's emotional health, which is significantly more important than all their certificates, all their diplomas, all their qualifications. Even if it's an A star and a 45 in the IB, it doesn't really matter, because Professor Richard Layard from the London School of Economics, he said that the most powerful childhood predictor of adult life satisfaction, that means when you're 30 years old, for you to be happy, the most powerful predictor is the child's emotional health at the age of 16. The most powerful. So if a child is feeling safe and secure and enjoys their learning, feels emotionally healthy, then quite likely that he or she at the age of 30 is going to be mentally balanced and have a good time and have healthy relationships. The least powerful predictor is the child's intellectual development. So just because a child is getting A's and A stars, it does not mean that the child is going to be holistic. It does not mean that the child is going to be completely happy. So in the previous slide, it also says primary school teachers have more impact on the emotional health of children than on the children's performance in maths. So as teachers, we have more impact on whether this child is going to live a happy life than if this child is going to be good in math or not. So we need to reevaluate, what is our role? Only as a maths teacher, only as a science teacher, only as an English teacher, or we take on the responsibility of making sure that school is a place where not just a student studies, not just a learner learns, but a person is living. That person in front of you with a heart that's beating is living. That person in front of you has the potential and the capacity to invent and engineer the next cure that we could be suffering with by the time they become a doctor, by the time they become a physicist, by the time they become a biologist. So, we need to really respect that each and every child has the capacity to be something greater. And the key or the problem to all of this is communication. So how many times do we actually do this? Instead of being here, sitting, really busy, do we greet kids at the door? How many times have I asked teachers, do you play music in your classroom? I can't believe it, even primary school teachers. Maybe 2 out of 10 say they use music and the other 8 say, well, no, there's no time for that. There's no time for that. Music is such a thing that it can bring you back 20, 30 years and make you cry right now. The song that your mother sang to you, the song that you were hearing, when your grandmother was still alive, a song that meant something to you when we met our first, loved one. Those things have such powerful emotions, and yet a lot of us don't use it. Do we make our interactions positive? Do we design our classrooms as a home, as a space that is safe for our students? And if they were to do something wrong, or they're upset, or they're angry, are there spaces in the classroom for that? Do we love them? Do we allow them to ask us questions every single day? Or are we just focused on our lesson plan, lesson plan, lesson plan? Let them ask questions. They're sitting there waiting to ask questions. They want to know more and more and more. But if more and more time is spent on, well, unfortunately, in this session, it's only me talking, talking, talking. But the ideal way would be for me to listen to all of you as well. How well do we know our kids? Do we keep a record of their exchanges, right? So, for example, if we have a problem with a child, like let's say Jason, and Jason's not talking to us that much, write down in our diaries instead of always being on, social media or something. Write Jason, and make a commitment. I'm going to talk to Jason today. So, Jason likes football. Spoke to Jason about the football finals, and Jason was like, "What? You want to talk about football?" He was surprised, and then he said, "Mr. Richard, if you don't mind, when I go home, I'll send a video of that goal that I was talking about." You know, if Clarissa really likes celebrities and she's normally the one that's really quiet and she doesn't like to participate as much, go on Google, create crossword creator, put some of the celebrities that you think she likes, and before she comes to class, just leave it on the table. And she looked down, she's like, "What? Huh? I want to fill this up. Who did this for me?" "Oh, it was me, Clarissa." "Mr. Richard, how did you know that I like celebrities?" So it gets them excited. It gets them to believe that you as a teacher appreciate and love them much more than just a student. You look at them as persons, as people. Greet Angel, sit down next to her during snack time, ask her about the weekend, speak to people, and select the students that are usually have a lack of conversation, usually they're off task, students that are quieter. Just because you're getting your A's and A stars, it doesn't make it healthy if they're not talking. Okay, so just because you're getting A's and A stars, but if they're quiet, you need to continue to do these kind of exchanges with them, to encourage them to speak, to encourage them to believe that they have a voice, they have an opinion, their values matter, their voice matters, what they think in their mind matters, because they could be brought up at home as a person that just basically has a job to do, which is you better get good grades. And luckily enough, the child has the capacity to be able to do that, but the child does not actually believe that their opinions matter at all. Just because they don't seek your attention, don't think that you shouldn't be speaking to them. It's really, really important that we speak to all our students, not just 80% of them that take up most of the time, or 20% of them that take up 80% of the time. Be mindful about that. Create checklists. For Angela, let's say Angela is a little bit more, quieter and more neutral, and she's struggling a little bit. So create about 5 or 6 days worth of comments, or 2 weeks worth of comments. And trust me, just doing this continuously, consistently, will change your relationship with that child. And once you change your relationship with that child will do anything for you, absolutely anything, right? So be mindful that if we invest in our relationships with our children, if we do that, then automatically they will invest in you as well. Reflect on how this changes in your classroom. Reflect on how it changes with other students. Now, Angela is always quiet. Nobody really talks to her that much. She sits down on her own. But the moment you do something special with her, you do an activity with her, give her the crossword, the students are seeing you having this exciting conversation with her. What are the students? I want to be in that conversation. I want to know what Mr. Richard is talking to Angela about. What is Angela saying? What is Angela doing that is getting my teacher's attention? You guys are like the gods in the classroom. And if you're the gods in the classroom, then we have to model a behavior. And only if we respect Angela, then only will other students also start looking at Angela in a different way. So we need to see how this changes us. Maybe Angela was neutral. Maybe Jason made us anxious and dreadful. But by talking to them, we are slowly moving them up into the other end of the matrix, which is enjoy, have the pleasure of having them in our classrooms, right? When the stories about a student are saturated with negativity, have the courage to not join in. So if you're in a staff room that always complains and banters about students, do not join in. You tell a new story. You say, hang on, That's not the Angela that I know. Angela and I have conversations all the time. Just yesterday we were speaking about, football and how Manchester United won this game. And she told me about her dad and how her dad is so passionate about football. So you tell a different story because you want to be the teacher that's on the narrow path and not the wide path. Now, we're all not perfect, but we should not be in the same room or the same space that has teachers talking about young children, the future of this country, the future of the world in a negative way. We should not be entertaining that. We should not be. It's complicit. Yeah? So words have a lot of power. And these are the virtues that I speak on a lot. I have a couple of workshops on the virtues of character as well, which I'll speak to you about. But this is basically a vocabulary for us to be able to acknowledge children, to guide children, and to correct children. And we need to be able to learn how to use the virtues language, right? For example, after speaking to Angela, man, I acknowledge you for your creativity and your initiative. I never knew you were involved in these activities. If Angela is sitting quietly, we would say, Angela, how can I help you gather the courage to be more confident to speak in front of your class? And if Angela has done something wrong, you would then correct and say, Angela, you need to be more cooperative with your friends now. Let's be enthusiastic together. Let's have our ideals and let's work with excellence. So the expected behavior is always brought out to the front. Not what they've done wrong, but what do they need to do? How do we see the capacity? So if you want to learn a lot more about this, just head over to anps.id or email mail@anps.id to Rini. And there are 2 workshops coming up for the virtues, speaking the language for positive character and looking for the virtues in our lessons as well on the 11th and on the 25th of November, of course, on Zoom. These are the peacefulness corners that I was talking about in class and allowing us to actually respond rather than react to situations. So what do we do for our students that need to respond to situations rather than react if they've had an argument? So this is an example of making the class like a home, like a safe space, right? What do we have in our classes that make it like a home, like a safe space? And we'll discuss that in those workshops as well. Last but not the least, before I end, as the MC spoke about before, Farah, I have a podcast called Family of Virtues that is centered around parenting and children. And it's basically a podcast with interviews from leading educators and psychologists all around the world. And it's got lots of inspirational posts as well. You can go to familyofvirtues.com to listen to the full episodes. Each episode is about an hour long. So there's a lot of good stuff in there. However, in order to get updates, just go to our Instagram @familyofvirtues and follow through. And just for today, because we're really excited and we're in a celebratory mood, we speak about the languages of love a lot in virtues, especially the words of affirmation that I spoke about, the acknowledging. So I've got 2 copies to give away, the 5 languages of love of children and the 5 languages of love for teenagers. And how can you get into the running? Follow Family of Virtues straight away on Instagram and 2 random people will be picked. So you have to follow today and 2 random people who follows today will be picked and you'll be contacted and we will send you copies of 5 languages of love for teenagers and the 5 languages of love for children as well. So I've got 2 of these to give away. So again, just follow Family of Virtues on Instagram and we'll be randomly selecting our winners from there. And of course, familyofvirtues.com is the website where you can listen to these podcasts on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, anywhere you listen to podcasts, it's available. So please make sure you give it a listen as well. Last but not the least, I end with saying that the secret in education lies in respecting the student. The secret in education lies in respecting the student. I hope you've learned a lot today. I hope you were able to pick up some really simple tips that you can use in the classroom. And if you need to find out more, please feel free to contact me, richard@anps.id. But again, at Family of Virtues, send me a direct message on Instagram and I'll be able to respond to you there as Well, thank you so much for your kind attention. I honor you for your commitment to learning, and I really hope that you have a wonderful time here at Guess. Thank you so much. I'm not sure what exactly happens now. Um, I'll hang around the room for a bit. Oh, there you are, Farah. Hi.
Hi. Thank you very much, Mr. Richard Sidharta. It was a pleasure to have you with us. We hope
Most welcome.
everyone enjoyed this amazing presentation. And beside our live stream session, there are also on-demand sessions that you can access for today's 4 and 5 November 2020. You can also visit our virtual exhibition through the Meet Our Exhibitor feature in the menu on the left screen of on the left of your screen. And to get the complete information, please contact us at marketing@tarsus.co.id. Thank you for joining us today. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, and best wishes for all of us.
Thank you so much. Thank you.